is it too little, too late? I mean, that is what we titled today's episode. Did they wait too long to cut 25?
I think that the 25 was needed because you're starting to see some weakness around the edges, but I don't think there's red lights flashing yet. We had 2 years of payroll data. 1.7 million jobs just disappear. But the one thing that the labor market has going for it now is immigration has been cut off. So we closed the border. So now we don't have massive competition with American workers anymore. So you've taken what labor markets need is excess supply, and we no longer have that excess supply just flooding into the market. So on the margins, it's probably a good thing for the labor markets that the border is closed, that we don't just have unfettered immigration.
Well, it is. I mean, it's keeping the unemployment rate down. I mean, the number is actually, so to your point, 1.6 million people less in terms of net immigration than previously estimated. And so the total decline from 2024 through the year to date is 2.4 million fewer immigrants, at least as far as we know, according to, again, an agency that may or may not be able to estimate these things effectively. But I guess what I'm asking is, if the numbers were overstated, the jobs numbers, by 1.7 million over the last 2 years, you don't think that means, because I will just say I do think the Fed should have cut sooner. And it's not because I think inflation is under control, but I do think that the lower income cohort is getting clobbered, and you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
And that is something the Fed should be thinking about. This whole notion that they have a dual mandate. For the last 5 years, they've focused on one or the other, and it sounds to me like that's what they're doing again: jobs over inflation. Because didn't you say that the chairman said inflation won't hit 2%? I was in a meeting, everyone,
Yes.
with Arthur, that inflation won't hit 2% until 2028.
Yeah. So now the expectations by the Fed are we'll see 3% on PCE this year, decreasing to 2.6 in 27, decreasing to 2.1 in, or sorry, 2.6 in 26, 2.1 in 27, and then we'll finally hit the magic number 7 years later of 2.0.
And that's scientific, right? I mean, they're calculating that based on what?
Yeah, which is funny because in the press conference, somebody asked him the question, "What do you about jobs, and what do you think the jobs market will look like in 3 years?" And he's like, "How would I know? Nobody can predict 3 years from now what's going to happen in a market." But then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll get inflation down, no problem."
Okay, so let's talk about something you pointed out to me, which is the CPI. And the article that came out it was actually on 9/11. And so we had the Charlie Kirk tragic assassination on the 10th. And then we had the memory, or the memorialization of 9/11 kind of occupying the news on the 9/11, obviously. So tell us about this. This is the interpolation article.
Yeah, so the BLS came out. Well, somebody found out, but BLS was so on par. They have all these inputs that go into CPI, and usually they have trouble with about 9% of them. So they have to just kind of guess, but it's an educated guess. And so on par, it's usually about 9 that or on average, it's about 9% that they have to kind of impute into the thing. Well, as soon as Trump takes, and I'm not saying it's political or anything like that, but it just happened to be the very first month in February, that went from 9% to 32% are being estimated in CPI now. So if you're trying to lend credibility to your numbers, estimating a third of your numbers now in CPI does not lend credibility. And then it kept increasing over the next 3 months too. So we're still imputing a third of CPI just based on educated guesses instead of actual surveys or numbers that they're seeing.
Yeah, and there's no evidence, right, that the imputation is propping up CPI or maybe not understating it.
Right.
But the fact is, they aren't real numbers. They're
Right.
they're
And
taking the
this,
price from something in another region and applying it to a particular region where they couldn't find the number.
correct.
Yeah.
And
So if
and
we
this
did
is this is the same problem with BLS on the payrolls is they have a birth and death model, but they estimate births and deaths, but they also add immigration in. So that's why we get these massive swings to your point that they revised immigration down by 1.4 million. So there's all of these kind of just economist tricks or statistician tricks that they kind of do to try and get a trend, but it's not always right. And
And
that's
that seems like it would have been important in 1960, but now we have AI, we have data,
yeah,
we have all sorts of places where they can go to the data
right.
and take it real time. And in fact, that is ultimately what they do on some of the revisions. But I just find it laughable that you've got this guy standing up there reading from his iPad, telling us what he thinks,
Right.
and then he's stating it as though, like, to say we're going to have 2% inflation in 2028, but he can't tell you what the job market's going to do. Like, it's all nonsense.